Hello, welcome to week 6 vlog. I'm being weird. Okay, so for drama this week, we were put into groups for Bold Prima Donna, and I was put with Tash, which was lovely. I think it was mostly pairs, I believe. Well, last week we did, I'm confused about my weeks. So we got paired up with someone else in the group. I got paired with Tash, to work with absurdism, to just go for it, so to not plan it out or anything. So we had a newspaper and it was like a job interview, so I was ripping up paper and tying it in Tasha's hair, and she was like, any allergies? And I'd be like, lizards. So it was a little bit more just absurd without any meaning to it, but it did get a little bit monotonous and repetitive, so we can argue about the monotony and the repetitiveness of work life and stuff like that. I don't want to get into it too much, but we can talk about how interviews are like dehumanizing, and how it's asking you to sum yourself up in a thing and you can't. Whatever. Cool. So after we got put into those groups and we watched other people's performances giving criticism about absurdism and stuff like that, sorry, I'm cracking my knuckles, we got put into smaller groups, and I stayed with Tash, which was very nice because I think I work very well with Tash. She's lovely to work with. And we started doing Bold Prima Donna work. So we got given Mr. and Mrs. Smith's scene, talking about Bobby Watson, which it's talking about Bobby Watson dying, and then talking about lots of contradictory stuff. So I think what can be said about the absurdism is, the everyday mundanity of like how we just accept people dying and stuff like that. Like, not necessarily when it's a close one and there's a funeral, it's like a thing and you grieve, but when it's like someone's dead, you're like, okay, guess we'll go to the funeral and stuff like that. And then it starts talking about the children and like marriage and stuff like that. So maybe talking about like society's expectations and the things we go through and like traditions and stuff like that. So that's something we can talk about. So then to work on the absurdist side of it, to make it more ridiculous, Tash and I thought we'd make we do it every time they said Bobby Watson's name, because in the scene, Bobby Watson himself is called Bobby Watson, his wife is called Bobby Watson, and the children are called Bobby Watson. So lots of Bobbies to work with. So we decided to kick our leg up every time we said Bobby Watson, just as a little thing at first, but then when it gets towards the end, it picks up. I'll explain it once I've finished, talking about the whole thing. There was the clock, because the clock is a character within the piece, so it gets angrier at them, I think, throughout the piece. So there's pauses where there's like 7 bongs from the clock, then there's one where there's like 22 bongs on the clock, and that's after talking about marriage and weddings. So I think the clock is annoyed about how casually they talk about such important things, and how like marriage is almost misrepresented. Like, I don't know if that's the word I want to say. Almost like not as it's like meant to be. I feel like you just marry for the sake of it, especially within like the absurdism thing. So that's why the clock gets angry at them. And that's really fun to do. We do like a whole minute of silence and then jumping up and down. It gets explained better in the videos that we talked about, because we sat and talked about our rehearsal process and what needs to be improved on and stuff like that, which is really helpful. Also started falling on the floor anytime we contradicted each other, which just shows the ridiculousness of everyday life. And how they never really listen to each other, and we're never really listening to what the other person in the conversation is saying. We're thinking about what we want to say first, and obviously the absurdist is the extreme version of it, so they're accidentally contradicting themselves and each other every time they talk, because they're not actually listening to each other. So like I said last time, after doing research on absurdism and like Ionesco and Samuel Beckett and all of that, who is another founder of absurdism, he actually won a prize for it and everything. Woo, should have spoken about that last week. So so once you start rehearsing it, you then once you like actually get into it, you realize how fun absurdism is, and how it's fun to make up all these silly actions that don't mean anything, but going along with words that don't mean anything, but do mean something as well. So, like, the outrage of the clock of flying up in the air and jumping around and slamming onto the ground and stuff like that. And throwing ourselves over pieces of furniture and onto the floor just shows, like, the, like, emotional, not vulnerability, but, like, scale of humans and stuff like that, and how widely it changes, but how you can't see that really in the show, in the absurdist scene that we did, which is quite interesting. So yeah, there's that. We also did our final performance of it this week in like a fun split side, so we only ever had like half an audience watching us as opposed to the whole class, and there was always another production going on as well, which is interesting. You got to stay silent and respect the place you're working in, but also, you know, still do your piece. And it's nice to not have all the eyes on you, but only some of the eyes on you. And the room feels a little bit busier, which is good. I think is a really good way to start off with absurdism, because absurdism is scary, and especially doing it for the first time, first performance in front of a big audience would be not a good idea, I don't think. So it was a good idea to split them up, which was with Nige, yes. So then the question I've got from Drama is, obviously I've done how we could improve on it. Now those are in the little videos I've done with Tash. So, you know, working on not laughing during the piece because that ruins it. Cleaning up moves, making it slicker, obviously. Also, like, making sure the movements that we have are look purposeful and not like a tick, you know, because sometimes it can be a tick, but also with absurdism, but also we can like make it very clear that I'm lifting my leg because I have said Bobby, you know. So at the end, the last line I think is like, they've got 2 children, what do they call them? And it's Bobby and Bobby, and it's after throwing ourselves around and jumping up and down. It's interesting to do the just leg thing twice to bring it all back round. It's a little funny thing at the end as well. So then my long question, I suppose I've already answered this, which is true for most of the questions that I set myself, is how... I don't like these questions. I feel like I might stop them at some point. Rambling. So I spoke about how absurdism is important last week, and now my question is, how can we bring absurdism to life? Not like necessarily to life, but how can you portray it on a stage in a way that won't bore your audience? So like with our things, do repetitive actions, but don't make them so much so that it's like, I throw myself on the floor every time I say an H, or I throw myself on the floor every time there's a contradiction, which is, you know, every couple of lines, and you do it slowly instead of just being like bam, 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 instead of making it just crazy. You make it watchable with the repetitiveness, but also entrance your audience with, why am I kicking my leg? Why am I sitting still for a minute? The sitting still for a minute is so fun because like the audience goes dead silent. Like in the videos we have, the person who's filming for us stops halfway through because they're like, have they finished their performance? But no, you sit, you wait, and you let them brew, and you let them think about it, and they're like, what's happening? Why are they sitting still? What does this mean? You know? So it's quite interesting. So that's how, sorry, I took a drink. So that's how you bring absurdism to life, by, you know, or conveying it on the stage by making it interesting, the point that it's interesting, but also boring so it still makes the point to the audience. So like sitting still for a solid minute and just staring at a wall, because that's what we did. I was really happy with that. I was actually really happy with our absurdism piece in the end. I think we, to the extent that we know it, I think we really nailed what it is for us. I think we got that down, and I really enjoyed working with Tash. Okay, so then for dance, we just added to our routines, the other ones that we've done, so added like little leg things and stuff like that. And also did more work on the Nutcracker, getting those characters in, getting the little sweeties rolling around on the floor. But also we got some people to research, Gaga, Graham and Cunningham. I may have mentioned Gaga's technique before, because we got told to research them in like the first couple of weeks. So like Gaga, I think, takes their people outside away from mirrors. So when we did the first couple of things, we did it in front of a mirror, and then I feel like Catherine maybe made the deliberate decision to move us to the theatre where there weren't any mirrors, so we could work with our bodies more, so we're also not feeling judged. I felt like when I read that about Gaga, I was like, oh, Catherine, that's what she's done. And then Cunningham, no, I'll go for Graham first. So Martha Graham is like made modern dance, or started the concept of modern dance to combat ballet, and like the, you know, beautiful gorgeousness of ballet and stuff like that, but also like to combat it in like, all dance doesn't have to be pretty and stuff like that. I've got a quote here. It's based in the opposition between contraction and release, so based on a breathing cycle, so like very flowy and working with each other, which I feel definitely works for our warm-up piece, which is, you know, flowing around, but not in a ballet way, you know. It's a good mix of the two, I think, which is what birthed modern dance. It's the difference between ballet, but still a little bit ballet-ish. And then Cunningham, I think I read somewhere, knew Graham, or she helped him with something or something like that. So that's why I did Graham first. Cunningham worked very much on randomness and chance with dance, so it's quite interesting that you can almost see Catherine making up the routines before you do them, or changing them in her head. So sometimes they're different every week, which some people complain about, but I think is quite interesting because it always keeps us on our toes and keeps our work like fresher and, you know, better in our minds. We start experimenting with it more and changing some stuff up a little bit. So chance, the technique that I think we're somewhat using, not to a great extent, is something Catherine definitely uses, you can tell. And then what was I saying? I blanked my question for dance. Once again, I don't like it. So like, so evidently there's a clear difference between dance practitioners. You can tell by the everything about them. So what, like, I think is the point I'm getting at here is like, I'm rambling. Sorry, I'm all over the place today. It's talking about like what the importance of using practitioners in your work is with dance specifically. So like how I think with dance, sometimes you can choose to do it to a specific practitioner. So like, I don't know, Matthew Bourne with Nutcracker, or you can choose to let the practitioners influence your way overall. So Catherine, the way Catherine teaches is like a mix of all the different things she's learned, which I think is really interesting and a really fun way to learn, instead of just being like, there we are doing Cunningham, it's all about chance, do this, you know. It's like, this is what we're doing, by the way, these are some practitioners you should look up, and then when you do look them up, you're like, oh, okay, so these are all the reasons we do this, you know. That was rambling. Sure, I'm going to move on to singing. So singing this week wasn't too much of a shebang, because I'd already gotten out of the way with my performance. It was not my official performance. It was just watching other people sing their songs the whole way through, which is really interesting to hear, you know, the songs other people chose. I think Mabel specifically is really interesting because she chose deliberately to do a song that would challenge her with like opera in it and really big notes. Oh my god, is that girl a powerhouse? Obviously she was really nervous to do some of those bigger, higher notes, which I do not blame her. So it was fun. So I think I really loved the way she does that. I loved seeing the way everyone else was doing their songs as well. So like with Jago, he does, I can't remember what the song is called, but it's by Tenacious D. A greatest song? Tribute is what it's called. So he definitely works on the funny bits. So sometimes he tries a bit too hard to like make them funny by like listening to like the audience, by like the choir that suddenly joins in and like being like, yeah, this is cool. So I think, but his performance was still good. It was still funny and stuff like that. And he really got into it with like the voices of the different characters. So it's interesting to see other people's performances and analyze them and it really helps your own performance, I think, as well, to be like, wait, do I do that? Is that what she was on about? Oh, okay. So working gives you ideas on what to work towards as well, you know, focusing on diction and stuff like that. That was really quickly run through. So my question I've kind of already answered is like the value of analysing other people's work, other people's performance. Now this is real important because we need to be able to, like I said, think of it critically, but not in an overly critic way. You don't need to be mean, but be able to evaluate the performances and like magpie bits from theirs into yours and decide like, oh, that doesn't work for them, maybe it doesn't work for me, but like personally doing it. And also it like starts you thinking, the more you start thinking about others, like the way they do it, the more you become analytical of your own performance as it goes. For creative communications, we started watching some sort of videos about the purpose of art and stuff like that, and told about these art projects we're going to do, which you know, summarize everything we've done in creative communications for the last couple of weeks. So I'm probably going to have to do some watercolor or something, because I don't know, that's an art form I guess I'm most comfortable with out of all of them. And then I think I'm going to do something with something to do with mental health and stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'll say about the process as we go. Digital communications, we were told about masks we're going to be making, so I was right. We are making masks, which is interesting. I don't know how I feel about that yet. We also had to research some like old men and stuff like that to get to do our masks and stuff, so it's a little bit worrying because I don't know, I'm a little bit scared, but James says he's got some ways to combat the fears and stuff like that, so hopefully that will work. I'll be able to do some mask stuff. Cool. And then in review and reflect, we just got like did like a little bit of a summary of our websites and like everything we've done. We also like got told people to research, so like Gaga and Graham and stuff like that. So that's review and reflect, and that was week 6. Cool. And then it's half term, which is fun. So halfway through. Woo. All right. Bye. That was so awkward. Sorry.